This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on whatever you're watching on. I am Michael Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelist tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King. We're joined by a special guest tonight. He's an 11-year NHL veteran center. He's played with the Whalers, Leafs, Blues, Capitals, and the Mighty Ducks in their very first season of existence. He led that team in scoring. He's got 2 20-goal seasons under his belt, strong face-off man, and he is in the Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame. We have Terry Yake here. Terry, thank you for coming on.
Pleasure, fellas.
Awesome. We're going to have an interview tonight with Terry. We're going to just run through his career here, and Brian's going to start us out tonight.
All right, Terry. Well, when you were 7 years old, your family moved to Manitoba from British Columbia. You played a lot of great hockey in that province with the Brandon Wheat Kings junior hockey team. Back in 2019, you were inducted into the Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame. There's some great names on that list. There's Bill Ranford and Ken Reggett and Anders Hedberg, to name a few. They've all been on our show before. Can you tell us a little bit about your time with the Wheat Kings and also what that Hall of Fame honor meant to you?
Well, it was actually it's actually a pretty special culmination of an entire career. I mean, you start as a kid, right? At 12 years old, it was what I wanted to do. I wanted to play hockey. So I pretty much put every effort forward at everything I possibly could. At the time, there wasn't a lot of knowledge out there. We didn't have the internet. We figured things out ourselves. You talked to whoever you could. There weren't a lot of NHL players in Southern Manitoba walking around handing out advice. So, we did the best that we could. And, to get to play junior hockey in Brandon, an hour and a half from my hometown, my parents, my grandparents, my uncle, they came to every single game over the course of 3 seasons that I played there. Made that very special. No opportunity to get homesick because I saw my parents twice a week during the, when you're a kid, you move away from home at 16. And the 3 years in Brandon were amazing. Obviously, got an opportunity to get drafted. Had a couple pretty good seasons there. My last year was a really nice season of 140 points, and that got me started as a pro and got drafted by Hartford and spent some time in the American Hockey League and up and down, I think 17 to 19 times before I finally managed to stick and get my career going with Hartford and then subsequently get picked up by the Mighty Ducks. So the trip goes on from there. And 22 years later, I was finally finished. The body said it had enough. And got the opportunity to get inducted to the Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame, which kind of comes full circle all the way back to your home roots in Manitoba. And that was quite an honor to get inducted with Kelly McCrimmon and Marty Murray, a couple other former Brandon Wheat King people. Kelly obviously owned the team and coached it and managed it for many years. And Marty was a great player who won a Memorial Cup with the Wheat Kings. So great group of guys, and it's actually quite an honor.
Nice. So you mentioned the Hartford Whalers. That's your first NHL team. I want to take it back to the Ron Francis trade. Francis out, John Collin in. You're also called up, I believe, for your first time that season. That's the 90-91 season.
Yeah, I'd been called up a couple times. I'd had a few. I just have a couple of games, 2 games in 88-89 and 2 games in 90-91 or 89-90. And then in that season, they traded Colin for Francis, but they also traded Ulf Samuelsson for Zarley Zalapski. So that was also part of that deal. So it was basically a 2-for-2 with, I think Scott Parker was thrown in there as well as an additional player. And my opportunity finally came that season as I had started off in the American Hockey League. It came in an opportunity about a year and a half later, actually. I mean, I got a couple games. I played 19 games that year, but the real opportunity, ironically, comes sometimes when you're not expecting it. So the first time I was, 10, 12 times I was called up, they call you up and they tell you, it's like, this is an opportunity for you to play, get your feet wet and, try and stick. Well, for some of us, myself being one of those people, that was very nerve-wracking. And I think we put too much pressure on yourself. You go out there, you play safe, and you don't actually do what you're supposed to do. The irony is the first time I got called up and they said, you're just coming up for 1 game because John Collin, ironically, had been there for a little while, but he'd been suspended for a game. So he was going to be suspended for 1 game. And they said, we just want you to come up and play 1 game. And then we're going on a road trip. So you're going back. So I came down from Springfield It's only 30 minutes away. All I had was my suit, came to the game. And the first time I stepped on the ice, I went straight to the net, got a perfect rebound right on my stick. Empty netter, basically, side door, scored. And then later in the game, I blocked a shot on a penalty kill and sent Mark Jansen's in on a breakaway. And he goes in and scores a game winner against Curtis Joseph and the St. Louis Blues. And ironically, there I am with 2 points in the first game. They said, listen, we want you to come on the road trip. Well, we were going to Canada, Ottawa and Montreal. And I didn't even have a toothbrush, let alone an overcoat. So I'm like, I'm getting on the bus. I leave my car there. I jump on the bus and head up to Canada. And I got to go to the hotel gift shop and buy a toothbrush and toothpaste and everything. I got one suit. Don't even have a change of socks. I don't have an overcoat, but I'm on a 3-day road trip to Canada and ended up with a goal and an assist in the first period in Ottawa and a game-winning goal with about a minute and a half left in the first game in Ottawa. So I have 4 points in 2 games, and that's when I finally was able to stick. But it took an opportunity to play and not actually believe you were going to stick for me to relax enough to actually play my game and show them that I could play at that level.
Right. Well, you alluded to it earlier. 1993, you joined the expansion Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. Ultimately became their leading scorer at the end of that season. What was it like playing for the Ducks in their early days, and how were you able to have so much success right away?
Well, I think that was the ultimate opportunity for me, because you're coming from a team in Hartford where there's depth and it's already established. And then when you come to Anaheim, you're picked up as an expansion player, and there's not a lot of expectations. Everything was fun and new. The building was sold out every night, but we were all outcasts. We were all players that were left unprotected by other teams. So we all came in here with equal standing. And for me, that was a great opportunity. Again, another opportunity for me to relax, just go out there and play the game that I can play. And I was fortunate. We had some really good players, and we ended up winning 33 hockey games. We were only a few points out of making the playoffs. We were in the playoff hunt right till the last week in the season. So not only was it a great year personally, but it was a great year for the hockey club. I think we established, not just us, but Florida as well, who came in the same season. They established that there's a lot of good hockey players out there. And if you put them together and you give them a coach and a great, exciting environment, there's a lot of good players that deserve to be in the National Hockey League that can play. So expansion went rampant from there, as quickly moved from 18, 20 teams to now 32 in a short amount of time, in 20 plus years. So they added a team every other year basically at that pace, beginning with those early expansion days in the early 90s. So a lot of fun. Anaheim, a great city. The building was absolutely beautiful. It still is to this day. And the organization was first class all the way. And it was obviously a lot of fun to come and play somewhere different with sun and palm trees.
So October 19th, 1993, you get I'm pretty sure it's the first Mighty Ducks hat trick. So
yes.
What was going right for you that night? And I know Troy Loney was your guys' captain, 2-time Stanley Cup winner, coming off 2 cups in Pittsburgh, solid defenseman, and Bobby Dallas. I mean, you used the word cast-offs, but you had a nice mix. And of course, Guy Hebert was just incredible in goal. So just maybe tell us about that hat trick and the experience of playing with some of those players.
Yeah, I mean that was quite a way to start the season. We started the season with 5 games at home, and we had a couple of wins, or I think a win and a tie in the first 5. So we kind of got off to a decent start, and we went into New York. And as you all know, if you look at the record books, that team, the New York Rangers, ended up winning the Stanley Cup that year. So that was a formidable team with the likes of Mark Messier and Brian Leach and Richter in goal. So it was a heck of a hockey team. And I think we came in there with no expectations, and we just did what we could to play the best game possible. And we came in there, and for me, the puck was bouncing. I had a couple of partial breakaways. I managed to score a couple in the background, and then a puck that bounced right to me that I fired over Richter's shoulder for the hat trick late in the game. And all of a sudden, we look at the score clock. It's a process every single night. You go in there, you do what you can. You don't think about the win or the loss at the end of the game. You just try and win one period, one shift at a time. And And we stuck to the process that night. And lo and behold, at the end of the night, we found ourselves the winners. And as the story goes in the New York dressing room, that was the great awakening for them, because they were embarrassed to lose to the Mighty Ducks. But the reality was we weren't that bad a hockey team. You know, were we going to beat the New York Rangers in a 7-game series? Probably not. But that one night, we were good enough to get it done. And it's a great memory.
Well, like 1993 and 1994, you were leading the Ducks in scoring when they decided to deal you to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Was that something that you expected, or what was your initial reaction when you heard that?
No, that was a shock, and that was obviously very disappointing. That was a contract dispute. We had just gone through. We were having the NHL was going to start a lockout, so they were locked out the first half of the 94-95 season, and contracts were obviously the big dispute. So I was up for a potential pay raise, and the Mighty Ducks were probably not going to give it to me, but arbitration was probably going to get it for me. And, you know, the answer was just simply no. So something that was done absolutely terrible job by my agent, not keeping me aware, not keeping, you know, the organization aware of the fact that I wanted to stay here. And I would have loved to have been in Anaheim for multiple years. And unfortunately, it was quite a setback in my career, because I went to a team in Toronto where they had 6 or 8 quality players up front that were all clearly better than me, from Doug Gilmour, Matt Sundin, Mike Gartner, Randy Wood, Nikolai Borishevsky. I mean, they had a lot of quality players there, Mike Ridley. And I wasn't going to crack the top 6 in Toronto. It was just not something that could be. I mean, we ended up beating the Toronto Maple Leafs as the Mighty Ducks the year before multiple times with the same guys. But when you play on a night-to-night basis, it's not something that it's not a group that I'm going to get ice time over. So it ended up putting me in a bad situation, and I found myself floundering in the American Hockey League for a year and a half after trying to find my way back to the National Hockey League before I finally got back with St. Louis. So not something I'm fond of, and it's not a good memory, and I would prefer to put that one behind me. And I've tried to close the door on it, because overall things worked out pretty well. But I was really disappointed at that situation. And Toronto was not very friendly to me as a player or a person, because of the fact that we're there to play hockey, and I didn't get an opportunity to play there.
So you're on a very small list of players that have been picked in 2 expansion drafts. We just talked about the Ducks one. What happened with the Thrashers that you ended up not being on that team? Was it that, St. Louis just really wanted you back, or what happened with that?
Well, that was an interesting scenario. We went to Atlanta. Don Waddell was the general manager, and Kurt Fraser was the coach, and they told us to get a house. So I bought a house. I was one of 8 or 10 guys that were told to get a home. I was playing over 20 minutes a game in the preseason. I was playing the point on the power play. So it seemed like hockey-wise, everything was going to be fine. Halfway through training camp, about the middle of September, the ownership group sold to another group. And the second group came in and said that we don't want to win too many hockey games this year. We want to build through the draft. So we're going to be, we're going to play some young guys. And the team that you thought, based on the training camp roster, would have been there at the start of the season, there was only a handful of guys that were still there at the end of the year. They basically played a lot of kids. They found themselves, high in the draft, so they could eventually get an Ilya Kovalchuk and Danny Heatley and some other guys that became stars for them. So organizationally wise, that was probably the right move. So late in training camp, I didn't even get to the regular season. Late in training camp, they decided to put me on waivers and a few other guys that were going to end up leaving the organization. And when I got put on waivers, St. Louis Blues picked me back up, and I became their, the third season back in St. Louis as Mr. Versatile. I think I had a few guys in my court there. Mike Kitchen, who was with me in Toronto, Joel Quenneville, who I played with in Hartford and was also the coach for 2 years there. And then Jimmy Roberts was my coach in Springfield in 1991 and coach in Hartford. So I had 3 guys who knew me and knew that I could come back and help as a depth player, play on the 4th line if necessary, or fill in on a 1st or 2nd line status. And we went in, and that team in St. Louis ended up having the best record in the National Hockey League that year and won the President's Trophy. So, I think they were looking to make sure that there was plenty of depth, and I was one of those depth pieces.
Well, speaking of St. Louis, on April 27th, 1998, Game 3 of the Western Conference quarterfinals. The Blues trailed Luke Robitaille and the LA Kings 3-0 heading into the third period. But your Blues rallied, tied the game up, and then with about 7 minutes left in the game, you scored the game winner. What do you remember about that goal, and how were the Blues able to turn things around so dramatically?
Well, I remember it like it was yesterday. Probably one of the greatest moments in my career. Probably one of the. It's Monday Night Miracle too. We were playing. It was game 3. We were up 2-0. We were down 3-0, I believe, going into the third period, and there was an incidental. We'll call it an incidental contact by Jeff Courtnall on Jamie Storr, the goaltender. And then Sean O'Donnell jumped Jeff Courtnall and ended up getting a 5-minute major. So we had a 5-minute power play. And ironically, we didn't score in the first 2.5+ minutes of the power play. And then Brett Hull gets one, Pierre Turgeon gets one. And I think somebody else, Jim Campbell, maybe gets one. And suddenly we find ourselves tied with about a minute left in the power play. And of course, the momentum at this point had changed, but we're still in the power play. And, we ended up with a face-off just inside the blue line. I won the draw back. It went D to D, a shot, and Jamie Storr mishandled the rebound and right on my stick for an empty net. And there we are, 4-3. And then the boys shut the door. Of course, Grant Fuhr in net, and Al McInnes and Chris Pronger on the point. We had the ability, and a president's, a very top team, a top 3-4 team in the National Hockey. We had the ability to shut that door and close them out. So it was a great win, and we ended up sweeping the series 4-0 before going on to the next round. So great moment, great hockey game, and it was quite an experience.
So we'll get you out of here with this tonight. What can we find Terry Yake doing now? What are you up to these days?
Well, I'm coaching a couple of teams out here in Southern California, a couple of AAA teams, and I'm working for a buddy of mine doing some consulting, doing some paperwork, books for him out here in California, enjoying the sun and loving life in Southern California. When you can play golf 12 months a year, it's pretty hard to complain. And as you can tell, those aren't fake palm trees behind me. Those are real palm trees. So enjoying life in Southern California, and still have a house in St. Louis. So still have my roots there, still go back there for Christmas and multiple events during the year, but enjoying life out here and trying to find a way to make ends meet.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Terry. We appreciate your time.
Pleasure, fellas. Good job, and look forward to talking to you.
Excellent. I want to remind everybody, hit that subscribe and like button. Thank you for watching. Check out all our hockey shows in the archives. Lots of teams, lots of players. There's somebody that you're going to like in there, we promise you. Everyone have a great night. We'll see you next time.